Okay, so what I'm doing now is I've opened up my settings. I'm going to Wi-Fi. It's running right now on Samada, but there's the NeuroLamp. So I just chose it because I had logged out. I put in the password, which is Pineal777. That was Guy's choice. Right? Join. It's, you're waiting. Okay, there's the check. I've now joined it. So this tablet is now conversing with that control box. It's got nothing to do with public Wi-Fi, any kind of Wi-Fi anywhere. It's a personal conversation. Now what I'm going to do is, I always use Safari. You can use any browser. And I'm going to put in NL. It already remembers it, NL.com. You see lamp local. Go. And now I have the user interface so that I can control the device, that thing, from my iPad. And I still see Android E954 waiting in so there are a few others. That's not a big deal because it'll still work. But if you see something like that, it's because for some reason you did or somebody else decided to jump on when your Neuralite is on and you were on. Now that's why that stuff is there. After we clean it up, it'll disappear. Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, it's only after they open the browser too, or just that they jumped on the Wi-Fi that triggers?
They had to use their Wi-Fi to choose the NeuroLamp Wi-Fi. They had to use their settings.
And they had to know the password.
Yes.
To trigger that, okay.
So
yeah.
You need us to get off the Wi-Fi too.
Well, if you're on NeuroLamp, you can be on Wi-Fi, but just don't be on NeuroLamp.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm off.
Right? So you can check your devices, and if your Wi-Fi is reading NeuroLamp, you have to do the proper shutdown. Just don't shut down your Wi-Fi.
No, I did the shut off, but not
Okay.
Wi-Fi, so
All right. Okay.
So I'm off.
No big deal. So this is the user interface. Some of you know it well. If you want to come closer, feel free. We don't have to be so far away. We can move the camera if necessary. So you know that there are two choices on the user interface: Brain Gym, Brain Skills. The brain food is separate. It's the thing in your nose. You don't run it from here. You don't have to have this running at all. Okay, so don't be confused. There are three components to the Neuralite: Brain Gym, Brain Food, Brain Skills. But the brain food is the light into the blood through the nose. It's not run from this. Clear. It's as easy as touching the radio button. I'm now entering the Brain Gym. It's like you've got two doors. Which one do you want to go in? You want to go Brain Gym, Brain Skills. We're going in Brain Skills. And what is noticed, depending on where you are, a little bit, is that you'll notice that I have foundation, intermediate, and advanced levels. And that's like going to the yoga class. Do you want the beginner's class, the intermediate class, or the advanced class? And maybe it's not yoga, it's just exercise, right? Because if you go in through the intermediate door, what you're going to find is a class that does this and that and this and that and this and that, right? But this gives you kind of a safe zone. Now, if a person has low neuroplastic capacity and you choose to search around in the intermediate level, it's not like a terrible thing that's going to happen. These aren't hard, fast rules. You got to think about it. What I would do if we were a team. If there were 5 of us and we all did this together, now we've got to sit down as a committee and decide which of these sessions are more foundational, which are more intermediate, and which are more advanced. Sometimes it's really evident. Sometimes you're not quite sure. It's like, it's kind of in between. Well, we'll choose one. So don't think that this is so rigid that if you do an intermediate session on somebody and maybe they don't have a lot of vim and vigor, that you're going to do something bad. It's not like that. It's just that the probability of them integrating this lesson is going to be low. because it's a dance step they can't quite pick up that fast. You know, I was just in Texas. You know, there are all of these line dances that are so famous out of Texas, and they're so much fun. Some of them are really hard by my standards, like too many. You know, I like the simple ones because it's fun and I can do them, but then they start doing these other ones that, I mean, obviously these people have been practicing a long time, they've got a lot of energy, and they can do it. Well, all that happens is if I try to do it, I don't do it very well. The probability of me learning that dance that fast is low. So I say, forget it. You know, I don't want to do it. I'll wait for the next one. It's like that, right? I don't want to, because there's a lot of science here, I don't want to give you the impression that it's like giving the wrong drug and they go into a coma. You know, it's not like that. There's a set of guidelines. These are principles that have, you know, a reasonable amount of flexibility. So if there's a session that you just want because it's your favorite session, I mean, isn't that the thing where you want everybody to have the one that's your favorite because you think it's the best? That's the big problem from massage therapy.
Well, essential oils as well.
Well, yeah.
You know,
Same deal. I mean, that was...
they buy the one that they like, but they're not sure that, you know.
Well, yeah, you go. You know, it was a thing back, you know, in the years that some of you know well with massage therapy and body work, that the assumption was that, you know, everybody needed the kind of massage session that you like the most to receive. You know, it's obvious. If you like that, everybody must like that. So, these are guidelines. And understand that if it was a 5-person committee, that we would come up with some pretty clear decisions, and some of them wouldn't be so clear. So we would vote, or flip a coin, or say, it's not that important. Any time that you think you're pushing the limit a little bit, then take down the light intensity. You know, that's your buffer. That's your way of backing off a little bit, because you can't control the compositions. They are what they are. It's like, you know, if you put on a tune and you're going to listen to it, it's recorded, you can adjust the volume. You can't change the tune, but you can at least adjust the volume. So it's like that. Yeah.
Can something bad happen if the light is on too high, the intensity?
They won't like it. It's going to feel like it hurts. It's just like, it's like driving at night and somebody has their high beams on. It's like, you know, just, it's annoying, it's bright, you have to turn your head. It doesn't damage you, but it's irritating. There are people that are quite photosensitive, so it can create like a period of increased sensitivity for some minutes after, because it's a flash and a blast. You know, what I suggest that you do for yourselves is do a little bit of experimenting. You know, put it up a little bit higher. See what that's like. It's like, well, it was too bright. You know, the conclusion is pretty simple. It's like, I would like it if it was a little less bright. That's all. And if it was quite bright, you know, the thing is, you can watch if you're doing it for somebody. If they're doing facial contortions, if they're kind of squinting their eyes, if they're fidgety, one of the first things that you can do is just ratchet down, because you can change the intensity midstream, mid-session. So you've always got that safeguard. You know, it's not that difficult. After a while, if you have a few basic questions you know how to ask, and you do your assessment in terms of their general vitality, you know, what's going on, it's hard to be too wrong, especially if you always, in your decision making, go conservative. You know, sometimes you get this feeling of like, just like a little bit, like, you know, just a little bit, you know. I don't know why, you know, you're like feeling a little weird that day, or you're like the trickster or something. It's like, I want to try to resist that, okay? Try to resist that urge and be cool, be calm, you know, do no harm. If you don't quite know, then back it down. That's all. After a short time, I mean, a few of you that have lights, especially specifically here the Neurolight, you know, it's not that hard, right, Mark? I mean, after a while, it's not like a real mysterious thing. What's the I don't know if you work with people or just yourself. What's the average light intensity that you notice? The average one, more or less.
I would say about 12.
12. That's cool.
Depending on lighting, but yeah.
Yeah, depending on the ambient lighting, the ambiance, right? I always say that the typical range is somewhere between 10 and 20. You know, you're going to find most of the stuff there. Not often do you go above 20, unless the room is really bright. 20 is pretty, 20 is not based on a human measure. It's a metric of the technology. Because actually, what constitutes like all the way compared to the first devices is only half. The first devices, the 100% was based on the capacity of the hardware. It had nothing to do with the fact that human beings were experiencing this. And the realization pretty quickly was, this is just way too bright. And there are people that want to go up there, so it's like, no, that's not good. That's like way too bright. So what constitutes 100% now is actually 50% of what it used to be. Because there was no human metric. There was just hardware metrics. So, but yeah, this is what I say. Between 10 and 20 is kind of where you're going to be. And because you're photosensitive, and you've got hormonal stresses and stuff, and the nature of after trauma, you kind of get the idea that you don't come in with heavy metal. At that point, you come in with a ballad. So I took the intensity down to 3%, and that was plenty.
It was perfect. And by the way, I went outside without sunglasses.
Oh.
Bright, beautiful day.
Uh-huh.
Did not squint. Did not have any eye pain.
Yeah.
My eyes were more relaxed than they've been in years.
Yeah. So
someone asked yesterday, that would the astigmatism go away?
Yes.
Over a period of time?
Yeah.
I just from my experience today, I think it's possible.
I say it's possible, but I don't know.
Right.
Just because when things work better in self-regulation, a lot of problems go away that are a result of lower levels of self-regulation. The efficiency increases. A lot of things that you think are there forever, they kind of get better. It's like, well, because the system knows how to figure it out. Okay, so brain skills. You've got levels: foundation, intermediate, and advanced. I thought foundation sounded better than beginner. And the fact is the truth, like we said yesterday with scales, that the idea is that these really are foundational. Okay, I put them into 5 categories. I call them peace, cognition, mood, dependency, and exploration. 80 is a lot, and if you just had to go through a list of 80, it's like, oh my God. So I thought, let me categorize them, not only by the degree of complexity or demand, but let's kind of put them in kind of boxes or themes. So I chose peace because I didn't want to use meditation, because some people think, well, I'm not really interested in meditation per se. So peace is just kind of, you get the idea. It's that part, that zone. And then the cognition actually has the most of all of the brain skill sessions or compositions, because you're dealing with all the issues of how the brain works, intention states and memory and thalamus cortex synchronization, a lot of things that are more about neurology. That's the cognition one. Mood, you get the idea. That's when you're working mostly more in kind of like emotional issues and spaces where you want to work with them, because a lot of the times issues have mood associations. So you've got to work with the mood issues before you can get into the cognitive issues. It's like the guy that I told you that was getting short-term memory loss. He couldn't remember words, even though he's very intelligent and uses words in a very articulate way. He got frustrated because of that. And the frustration by association was making the problem worse. So instead of working on attention, short-term memory, in those kinds of sessions, no, we go over into the mood and we work with that irritability, angry, frustrated thing. And you know what? Not only he liked understanding it, and just understanding that the frustration was making it worse was already a benefit. And then by doing those brain sessions, reducing irritable, angry, frustrated states, the short-term memory got better. what he realized is that his emotional reaction to the issue was becoming fused with the issue, and that he started getting frustrated even before he attempted to remember, because he was anticipating. Right? There's one session here that's so great. It's called Reduce Performance Anxiety. It sounds like, like be calm more before sex or something, but that's not what it means, right? Performance anxiety. It's that anticipatory anxiety. Some of us have a problem with that because of our experience of some issue that's a problem. Even before we engage in the problem, we anticipate the problem. And we have what's called anticipatory anxiety, which is different than being anxious because of the actual experience. You're not even having the experience that creates anxiety. It's like going to the party and you know that socializing and meeting people creates anxiety because you're an introvert. So your wife says, hey, guess what, honey? We're going to Jack's party tomorrow night. It's even a day away. You already start to feel anxiety because you're anticipating being in the crowd. You got to talk. You'd rather be over in the corner playing with the puppy, but you've got to pretend, because it's like a business party or something, and you got to show. So it's called anticipatory anxiety, which is related but different from anxiety. It's this forecasting thing. So these things are built in, and we'll talk more about the methodology this first part of the day, and more of it in the second part of the day when we talk about applications. Okay, because in the beginning, you're probably going to work with what I call menus, and I'm going to show you that in the website if you haven't seen it. That there are actually lists that say, hey, if it's anxiety, look at these sessions, these are going to help. Right? So, you're going to develop this in stages. Peace, cognition, mood, dependency, which is a soft word for addictive behavior. I didn't want to put addiction because it sounds a little gnarly, so I put dependency. But if you look at the sessions, they're surrounding it. And some of them are general, they're non-specific. Some of them are more specific, like there's a nicotine cigarette thing, there's an alcohol thing in there. These have been researched pretty well now. There's one big study, I should post it. It's the most extensive study ever done in terms of brain behavior in relation to alcoholism. And it's really fascinating. One of the findings is the alpha state, which is that calm and clear state, is very difficult for some of us to settle into. We jump from beta, and then there's this leap, and then it can be theta, and then maybe delta, but we don't ramp down very well. We don't ramp down through alpha from the beta, from the higher activities into the lower activities. And as it turns out, for some people, the first one or two drinks, they slip into alpha. And it feels good. It's like, I don't feel hyper, I don't feel excitable, I feel kind of calm. I like this. Then the mistake is that if I do more of that, then I'm going to feel even more calm. But you don't get more calm, you get more drunk. Right? The first...
Alpha default?
Sorry?
Is alpha default mode?
No. I was going to make a point. In alcohol, alcohol is a neurotoxin, we all know that, it works well. And for most people's metabolism, the first one or two drinks is a toxic reaction with the inhibitor class. So the nerves that are normally inhibiting go offline, so you feel less inhibited, which is why you just feel more comfortable, you talk a little bit more easily, you dance a little bit better. The first one and up to two by volume, whether it's hard liquor or beer or wine, whatever, right? After that, the excitatory nerves go into toxic shock. And that's when you're not dancing nearly as well as you think you are. You're kind of looking stupid, and you think you're funny, but your voice is too loud. And the excitatory nerves all go offline, and then, you're wasted. So there's a lot of this research, which is why it's possible now to do compositions that deal and dance around the various different brain states that are related to these various dependency issues. Because actually we're more and more able to not just identify them as a frequency, like 8.5 hertz is like magic, but these are the domains, and it's oftentimes how the brain transits. Can it walk a straight line, through those series, through those steps? Can it go phasically in that direction? Or is there a whole block that it can't, so it tries to go around and it can't? So it'll do something so that that state will occur for a period of time because they lack the natural either habit or inclination or ability to generate that state. It's like, oh, okay. The whole idea, is addiction, specifically alcoholism. Is it a disease? Is it a choice? It's all this kinds of talk. Well, the brain studies show that many, not all, but many people disposed to it have a problem with this alpha state. And they would really like to feel calm and clear, but most of the time they don't. So they're either in a dreamy state, and hopefully they can fall asleep because they tend to not fall asleep easily, because the tendency is to always jack into high beta. There's an early scale, this was developed in the mid-70s, and you can tell by the language of the time. It was right when the science was also incorporating the human potential movement, the New Age movement, so-called. And people think, oh, beta is bad. I don't want beta, because beta is like, your mind is thinking, and I don't want to be a thinker. I want to be from my heart, and, I only want alpha and theta because I'm creative, and deep delta if I can be awake, I'm a yogi. There's this attitude that the higher frequencies are like for losers, and that the lower frequencies are for the cool people. And this early before this misunderstanding, it was like an analog gauge, and you can tell by the languaging. The lower frequencies, they labeled that side samadhi, which is a misunderstanding. But this is 1974, I think, that this gauge was created and popularized, right? That direction was towards samadhi. And then the other, going in high towards the betas, even the gammas, they didn't label that loser thinkers. They labeled that ecstasy. Ecstasy. So you had this direction went towards ecstatic states, and this direction went towards, we could say, deep meditative states, samadhi they called it. You can see the language that they were borrowing. I mean, some of you weren't even born then, so what does it matter? But there was that scale. And then the concept is that if you continued, you progressed and developed skills in either one of those directions, that they came around and they met in the same place of matured awareness skills. That some people approach the awareness skills, we'll call it the power of now from Eckhart, or pure presence, or Rigpa, or naked awareness, or enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, that some people approach it through the more tranquil path, and that others approach it through more of the bliss path. But the idea is that those are just reflections of your tendencies, and that all roads lead to Rome. In this case, these two roads led to the same matured, clarified awareness. And that was the attitude then. And actually, out of full theory, what's called Dzogchen theory, they're missing one. Classically, it's three, but I won't go into that. But that was recognized. So what you see is that, these are things that we're discovering, and to paint it as good or bad is not the point. It's how it works for that person. That, and I was saying at the public thing, in the beginning, what we I say we meaning the community of seekers, scientists like us, that with the technology we were able to measure brain states Oh, by the EEGs. Oh, you're generating a whole bunch of this and a whole bunch of that and this and that. By the way, those are all averages. They're not specific. And the ones on the scalp, they only measure what's going on in the neocortex, which is a small percentage of the brain volume. But we would measure brain states, and then interview, probe, research. What were the apparent mind states that correspond to these brain states? In the beginning, the mistake is that it was causative, that this brain state caused that mind state. And then the realization after a while is no, not necessarily. But there is a correspondence. And now all the recent stuff is that we get people, and then I refer to this, like the famous Buddhist monks, and you see from University of Wisconsin and so on, they have all the things on their head, where we know that they can generate very deep meditative states. So now what we do is get them to go into their mind state and see what brain state occurs. So in the beginning it was mapping the brain and then corresponding what happens with the mind. Now we're more interested in mind states because the measurement technologies are much better, and seeing what kind of brain states. So this is the two big stages of evolution, and this is where I got the information and how to package the compositions here. So it's knowing how to correspond brain states and mind states combined with that composition thing, the storytelling, music composition style. You put those together, and this is hugely different than a simple brain entrainment process. And it's also hugely different than anything that has a lot of high degree of randomicity in it, because the randomicity keeps on moving the mind towards what's called disorganization. And sustained disorganized states result in uncommon states, where the person will shift by nature into a non or uncommon state. Right? Okay, so that's the blah, blah, blah. How many of you here have never had an experience of a Neurolite brain skill session? Raise your hand. 1, 2, no? 3? Not neuro. Okay, 3.